All right, I think we are live. Hello, everybody. I'm Kristina, founder of the National Women's Networking Group, and today we are interviewing Karim. He is one of the co-founders of BGMT, a media platform that serves expats, especially young expats. And they have a great Instagram account, podcast, articles. They're all over the internet, so definitely check them out. But for now, let's get to know the founder, and he can tell you a little bit more about what they do. Let me bring up Karim.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Karim. How are you today?
I'm all right. It's a busy day. I'm the type of person that doesn't stop working, but let's just say that this has been the highlight of my day so far. So I'm happy to be here.
All right, great. Yeah, that's entrepreneur life for you. You can't really stop working sometimes, or it's hard to stop.
True.
All right, well, glad you took a break. Come and talk to me and our members. So, Karim, we are super excited. You are now our new media partner. We'll be helping to promote each other, support each other, and of course, collaborate with each other, which we'll be talking about soon. So, can you tell us a little bit first before we go into GMT? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what brought you to the Netherlands, and what you've been doing since you got here?
Sure. So I assume most of you can see my name, but for those of you, just in case you can't, my name is Karim Oteify. I am 20 years old. I am originally from Egypt, even though I sort of grew up all over the world. So I was born in Egypt, spent a lot of my schooling time in Egypt, but then for the summers, I had to go to Germany for a lot of medical intervention. So that added up to about half of my life being in Germany. I also spent some time in France, some time in Switzerland. So let's just say the expat life isn't something that's uncommon to me.
Okay, cool. So you've been around.
To an extent, but I've never actually 100% lived anywhere until I moved here.
Okay.
So I moved here, I think it was September of 2018. So I moved here to start my bachelor's in media and communication at EUR. And it was just I had applied all over the world. I think it was 32 schools. So so yeah, I was keeping my options open, and then actually this was, I think, the last school that I applied to.
Okay.
And I just fell in love with the program, what they stand for. It's a lot about diversity, equity, very international perspectives, global citizenship, all of that stuff.
Nice.
So that's what brought me to the wonderful city of Rotterdam. And
Nice.
ever since I've got here, I've just been trying to readjust my life, trying to sort of rebuild everything from the ground up, trying to lay roots here. And part of that was starting BGMT with a good friend of mine.
Awesome. And so how did that come about?
That actually came about from an experience of struggle, of a bit of pain. So I had a certain visit to a certain organization, which I'm not going to name publicly because I like to keep things in the past. But I had a certain visit for a career orientation course that did not go so well. And that just left a profound impact on me. And I realized that my narrative as an international individual is not heard. There's the approach of, oh, you're an expat here. That means you only want to know where you can live, where you can eat, where you can send your kids to school. Very important stuff, but very, very primal, shall we say.
Yeah.
There isn't an exploration of a story, of a tale to tell. There isn't the exploration of who expats are as people, as members of cultures, as members of communities, as people who can bring in new and fresh energy.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, if I can't find that, I'm gonna make it.
Sounds familiar. Yeah, that's how IWNG was born. I was looking for a certain community and I couldn't quite find one that fit me. So here we are. We've got IWNG. And now we're going to come together with BGMT, which is really awesome. Yeah. So I think a lot of people are like, this is a first. We have a young man on here. Usually we always have women, but we really wanted to bring you on as a media partner because we believe that your vision and your beliefs and your goals align just perfectly with ours. We also really value inclusivity, diversity, equity, and helping support expats and let them be heard and supported. So it's a good match, I think. And what about your other co-founders? How can you tell us a little bit about them?
Yes, of course. So my two other co-founders are Vlaiku Mutrescu and Michaela Ertica. Vlaiku sort of helps around with the operations and business side, and Michaela is much more our content and social media superstar. She makes sure everything runs on time, makes sure the articles are in there, makes sure our presence on social media is just stellar. If any of you who are watching right now have been to our social media, you can just see how hard she works to make sure that everything looks crisp and right and professional. Because at the end of the day, your look is the first thing people see about you.
Yep.
And I really admire that she fights very hard to maintain, okay, we look great. We are not seen as, oh, this small blog or this tiny organization, but rather who we're meant to be, which is a platform to create a story.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I do think a lot of us, especially if we don't know the story behind something, might look at something that isn't invested into as much visually and think, oh yeah, not for me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
That's true. It is. It's really, that's the thing now, especially with social media marketing is the main thing you have to do as an entrepreneur, a small business to get out there is to make a good first impression. You have to have a nice aesthetic before people want to really delve in and see what you're all about. And I think she's been doing a great job. I've enjoyed working with her and seeing all the the things she does to make it all look pretty. My little reel and all of that was really nice, and she's very great to work with. So
she really is
cool.
So just to add a bit on that, in case you guys are curious to hear about the rest of the story. So after the idea was sort of fleshing out in my brain, I actually had a class with Laiku. We're in the same year. So I had the class with him, and I was like, yeah, I'm starting to think of this and that, and these issues are bothering me. And he was like, yeah, I want to help out. And that's sort of how we came together. And then he knew Michaela. She was 1 year above us, and they had known each other for a while. So he sort of brought her in, and we went from this little duo to this little trio. And now I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm just really proud that each of us really has a strong suit, and we complement each other very well.
Yeah, that's great. It's really nice that you were able to make those connections and work together to create something meaningful and impactful. All right. And I had a question in my head. Where did it go?
See, you'll find it, Kristina. You always do.
Yes. So what was I had a specific question. Okay, we'll just have to come back to it. So that was your this is what I wanted to know. It does come back.
Cool. Yeah.
I wanted to know what were your biggest challenges when you came here as an expat? What are the biggest challenges you had, and how have you worked through them?
Biggest challenges I had. That's a tough one. I think this answer might sound a little generic, but it's the Dutch directness. I come from an Arab culture. We have a tendency to very much beat around the bush. Very polite, very charming, very I'm gonna smile in your face and hate about you behind your back. Very, very, shall we say, classic. I would compare it to the Southern charm in a way.
Yeah, it sounds
So
very familiar.
yeah. So to go from that to a community that is so flat out with you was very difficult for me in the beginning.
Hmm.
Especially while I was still a first year student, very heavily struggling and having to deal with the fact that my first year here, I was not aware if I'd be able to stay or not. So basically, how it works in the system is as a first year, you have to pass something called your binding study advice,
Hmm.
which is the fact that so every academic year, usually university level, is 60 credits, and I had to make sure I got all of those. So it was partly adapting to that new system of education that I had never seen before, and adapting to a culture that was very different from mine.
Yeah.
And I will say, for I think anybody who just moved here or has been here for less than a year can relate. It can be a struggle,
Hmm.
but then eventually, once you pass that, and once the stress of oh, can I go? Can I stay? Once you feel like you've settled into your space here, you start growing and building and feeling a bit safer.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, and so let's talk a little bit more about BGMT. What is your media platform all about?
All right. So, our media platform, as you mentioned, is very heavily focused on the young international community.
Hmm.
Um, what we attempt to do as an organization is bring light to the power of this community, its diversity, its pains, its illnesses, its struggles that combine the struggles of being young. So things like finding out who you are, finding out what you want to do with your life, but
Hmm.
also the struggles of being an expat. And that has really taken us in a million different directions. We talk a bit about sex. We talk a bit about politics. Obviously, you cannot mention life here without mentioning the political background of it.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about things like intersectionality, cultural struggles. We also try to do some fun stuff sometimes. Like we, I think we recently, like I recently did an article about restaurants. Where sometimes we're gonna do stuff about cocktails. So it's a very all-encompassing platform that carries the vibe of oh, I'm an international global citizen while also being oh, I'm young, I'm fresh, I am trying to find my way through life, and we're just this group of people ready to help you out by exploring every story you could go through. And I think that's what makes us stronger. It's that instead of focusing on one element of the expat experience, we take it as a catch-all term
Hmm.
in a way for just life. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, what is the expat experience except for somebody young or not trying to build a new life?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I like that because a lot of expat information, like you mentioned, is very basic, necessities and, things you need to set up and all of that, which are very important, just the fundamentals. But to get into the deeper life of being an expat and what that means, because a lot of, some people may not realize what that means as far as being in a country, possibly by yourself or just not with the normal support system that you have at home of family and
Mhm.
friends, or yeah, and just navigating through a whole new culture. So yeah, it's nice that you touch on all different aspects of that you don't find in the very general expat publications.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's what really actually drew me into BGMT. I saw some of your articles and I really enjoyed them, and there was a nice article kind of explaining pretty simply like the politics of the Netherlands, which I appreciated because I was very confused. But yeah, even fun things like movie lists and, different places to go and social types, art stuff, everything. So I really enjoyed it. I was just sitting there going through all these articles and so I'm glad that we did end up getting connected. And yeah, so what about your podcast? Tell us about your podcast. What are you doing on there now?
What about my podcast? Okay, so sort of our original podcast is called Expat Excellence, and that the focus with that was to really highlight expat success stories. I was sitting down one day and I was thinking, not everybody is the biggest fan of reading sometimes. So I wanted to really bring in this new way to explore stories. And I was like, okay, well, what do I want to focus on? And then I just remember thinking to myself, back when I was trying to apply for my internship and how much that was a struggle for me and how little of success I could see at the moment while it was happening. So I was like, okay, I just want to highlight success stories. I want to highlight people that have come here, have built the life that they want, and have managed. So that sort of started off like that, where we did 2 seasons of that. One was 5 episodes. I think this one might be a bit shorter. And now we get to talk about our new podcast, Expat Sheroes.
Yeah.
Which, yeah.
Super exciting. So yeah, that's our big announcement mentioned in the description of this live, is that we are doing a podcast series in collaboration with BGMT, and it's called Expat Sheroes. And we'll be highlighting 5 women from members of IWNG and their journey and experiences, and also to get some advice and inspiration from them. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how that's going to roll out, what we're going to see and hear?
All right. That is definitely something I can do. So what you're going to see throughout the month of March on the BGMT platform, as well as on all of IWNG's platforms, aside from our usual articles and the usual things we do, is once a week, one woman will be highlighted throughout the 5 weeks of March, because March is a 5-week thing. And you'll get to see a reel of that woman sort of introducing herself. And then the podcast comes out where me and Kristina sit down with her and have a really in-depth, vulnerable conversation about her experience in this country. Depending on the woman, we'll touch on different topics. For example, our first episode, which comes out tomorrow, focuses a lot on things like mental health, seeking therapy, and the connection to that and culture. And also we dive a bit into things like spirituality and religious approaches. So it's really just trying to give that woman space to tell her story. Afterwards, I think a couple of days after each podcast, you'll get an article or some sort of piece from that woman highlighting a specific element of her experience. Again, for next week, I think it's going to be a self-care checklist. I can reveal that right now.
Yeah.
And then as a cycle that'll continue going, and then midway through, on the 15th, we will start collecting questions from you that you want to ask these wonderful women. Because by the end of that journey, on the last day of the month, we're all going to have a little interview just like this. We're going to sit down together and discuss what this journey has been about, what this exploration has been about for all of us. And then hopefully a little bit after that, through all of these wonderful stories and these wonderful talents, we will have a little report for you sort of about life here and how you can survive that, which will be featured on BGMT. And I also think, Kristina, you had mentioned something about a welcome pack of sorts.
Yeah,
that you guys are preparing.
Yeah, we hope to have your resource guide, as part of our welcome package for our new members, and and for our IWNG members, something that they can kind of look to and get some really good tips and inspiration on being an international. So yeah, I'm really so excited about this podcast. It's been so much fun already recording with you and the other ladies. Each woman that's a part of the podcast have been a real big part of IWNG. They've been super supportive. They've been involved. And yeah, I wouldn't be where I'm at today without them and so many more of our members. So I'm just so excited to showcase them, let other people get to know them because they're well worth getting to know and they're super courageous and inspirational. So I really appreciate you taking the time to give them that space to share their story and helping us to get their stories out in a really nice way, because this isn't a typical podcast, expat podcast. It's not just going to be, well, this is the visa I got and I moved here for my job and, I figured out this neighborhood and, that type of thing. It's really so much more than that. It's really a deeper conversation about, what we really go through personally, emotionally, mentally, when we take that big leap and go somewhere else and start a new life. So I really like the way that you did the podcast. You really brought out so much vulnerability in myself, and I've seen it in all the ladies that have recorded so far, and we've all really enjoyed it. It's been a great experience. So I'm so excited about this collaboration.
It really has been my honor and my pleasure to give this time and this energy to creating something that I really believe can help a lot of people, because we all hear these different stories of, oh, I moved here for this job, very generic. Oh, this was hard for me. This was easy for me. Very simple things. But when I started doing this, what I wanted to do was do something different, something real, because I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll watch a YouTube video or listen to a podcast and never feel like I really got to know the person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really wanted to combat that. And I'm really glad to hear that you were able to feel that and connect to that. And so have our wonderful ladies that have worked with us so far.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And so to our members, if you want to get to know a lot more about me than you've ever known, listen to this podcast because I lay it all out there. I have quite the story, and although I'm in the public face as a leader, I've censored a little thing, keep things back just out of self-doubt or fear, or you have to put on this kind of business persona. But in the last year, I've really wanted to kind of break out of that and be more authentic to myself, more honest with myself and others, and just more open, And so this is really like kind of a catalyst. I've been thinking about it for a while, and this is the action. So I'm really happy to have had that space where I feel really safe and able to talk about myself and my journey beyond just actually being an expat, but everything in between, before, and after that happens. So thank you for that. And yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So I think we covered pretty much everything we want to cover. I'm going to put up your information so you can find BGMT's media platform, where you can find their articles on their website, and Instagram, where you'll find some great content there as well, and just, information about what BGMT is up to. Anywhere else they should be looking out for you?
You'll find the podcast on Spotify and basically everywhere else you find podcasts. So as soon as it comes out, it'll be on Spotify first, and I think within 24 hours it usually syncs. You'll have it on Apple Podcasts, you'll have it on Google Podcasts. So wherever you listen to a podcast, you'll find us.
Cool. I'm going to put that in the comments, and the podcast on Spotify, and then later Apple and other platforms. Cool. And so for those of you who are watching on replay, if you have any questions or if want to know more about BGMT, you can always comment in the comments and we'll get back to you, or you can contact BGMT. I put in the description of this event their contact information, And so, yeah, but otherwise, just go check them out. Check out the podcast, check out their articles. I think you'll really appreciate it. And although it says it's for young expats, I myself am not that young, but I enjoy it immensely. And I think there's a little bit in there for everybody. So, yeah, don't miss out. All right, Karim, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for taking the time. I am looking forward to next week when we're going to do some more recording. Yeah, and I can't wait to see what comes out. So tomorrow you the podcast, the first episode, excuse me, of Expat Sheroes will be out, and it's going to be featuring Irina Angrini, who is the founder of Wellbeing Expat, and she has a really, really amazing story to share. So don't miss it.
So stay on the lookout for that.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Karim, thank you so much. And I will be catching up with you later. And thank you, everybody, to watch the replay. And please share with everybody. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.